What's up here, everyone? It's Vin from the Diamond Geezers, your Gangrene Geezer here. Episode 27 of the Gangrene Geezer. Still messing up 27 episodes later. Unbelievable. Maybe I should have come up with less of a tongue twister here. Thank you again for liking and subscribing. We're going to cover this week. We'll talk a little bit about the loss to the Jaguars. Really focus on news and notes for the week, and then talk a little bit about the matchup tomorrow against the New Orleans Saints, which, for all intents and purposes, is a battle for draft position, because obviously there's nothing else the Jets have to do this season but get the best position possible for the draft next year. Covering the game really, really quickly. Again, not much to talk about. It was an ugly loss. It was a blowout loss to the Jaguars. Another ugly start by the defense, and we'll touch upon that in the news and notes, because a lot went on with the firing of Steve Wilks. But again, Brady Cook starting the week before against Miami, it was 21-0 before you blink an eye. This week, it's 14-0 before you can even, sit down and get comfortable to watch the game. Just the defense just looked all kinds of bad in a variety of ways. Bad angles to the ball, poor tackling again. People just not being in position. Either they're not being in position because they don't have the talent to make the plays that they're being asked to make, or what I suspect, they're not being coached in a way to make these plays. People going under the tackle, the linebacker's flying in, but instead of going over the lineman and trying to take a better angle to the runner, they're cutting under the lineman and just getting outrun to the edge for big chunk plays. Linebackers, nobody played well. The defense is depleted. So there's really not much to take from this game. I love all the people who are, if they just keep looking as bad the rest of the way, how good did you think they were? And I've said this in past episodes. I drank the Kool-Aid before the season, but I've already admitted that, so we'll move past that. And I thought they were going to be better than they are, and clearly they're not. They were a 5-win team last year with Aaron Rodgers as their quarterback, and arguably better defense and more established coaching, and even better offensive weapons. So you come in and you lessen essentially everything, but you change the coaching staff, and you miraculously expect this team to be what? They pretty much are playing as to what we thought they would be playing. If anybody thought, or as especially after the first month of the season, that this team somehow would turn something around or be competing for something, we all were fooling ourselves. This team was destined for a high draft pick again this year. I know everybody wanted them to be the worst team so we can secure the first pick. That's still open. If you look at the standings, that's still available. My guess is that's going to wind up going to the Raiders. They're going to wind up getting the first pick. I know there's a lot in the news where they hope the Giants get that first pick, because since the Giants have Jackson Dart, maybe if the Jets finish close enough to that number one pick, the Giants would be open to trading the number one pick to the Jets for their first round pick and obviously other pieces. If the Jets feel so inclined to move up for either Francisco Mendoza or Dante Moore, in recent weeks, those are the two guys who seem to be clearly positioning themselves as the top two quarterbacks in this year's draft. Again, that is if they declare for the draft this coming year. So just everything about going back to the loss against the Jacksonville, everything about it. And I got Nacho here making another appearance. Come on, buddy, sit down here. Come on, sit. He wants to get behind me. For whatever reason, I don't know, last two episodes I did, he never sat behind me for all these months. Maybe he feels my pain. Maybe he feels, he wants to give me a little bit of, security by sitting around me when I start talking about the Jets. I talk Yankees and Mets, he's not around me. I start talking Jets, here he is. So gotta love him for that. Maybe he feels his master's pain when it comes to talking about the Jets. Nothing good about the game. The one thing I will say is Cook, for being an UDFA, for anybody who doesn't know what that is, an undrafted free agent, he looks like a better thrower of the ball than Justin Fields ever did. Looks like he has more command of what's going on that field than Justin did. Looks just as competent as Tyrod Taylor. So, nobody's saying that this guy's a quarterback of the future. Maybe he's your backup of the future. Maybe he's a third string guy for the future. But that's all we're trying to see. They're playing the Saints this week, and we'll touch upon that a little bit later. But other than that, then they got the Bills and the Patriots, not in that order. Those teams are playing for positioning, seeding, home field advantage. So they're going to bring everything they've got against the Jets. They already beat them up pretty handily, especially the Bills earlier this season when the Jets were at full strength and had everybody. Not expecting any miracles there. What I'm hoping for is it's not embarrassing. So speaking of embarrassing, let's start with the news and get into the news and notes of the week. Leading it up, of course, as I mentioned, Steve Wilkes fired as a defensive coordinator. Everybody saw this coming. This is something I said I thought would happen when the season ended. He was hired. I'm not sure what his connection to Glenn is, but obviously he had head coaching experience. He's pretty much the only experienced coach or heavily experienced coach on the staff. But there's a reason why when you don't have to dig that deep. Just look to see what his history has been in his past stops. A lot of one and dones. And in particular, when he replaced Robert Saleh in San Francisco, that defense went from one of the top ranked defenses and they plummeted a little bit to middle of the pack. And, so because the styles don't match. The players that Saleh likes and the players that Wilkes likes for his defense don't match up. So this is something I did not know before the season started. When I read about it recently, it makes sense as to why the defense is not performing well. You've got players that are pretty much holdovers from the Saleh era, don't play well in this style of defense. Now, also not surprising that the players that they traded for, and Phillips and Briggs and other guys who my guess is they dealt for them not only because of the high upside, but because of how they fit in this defense, have played well in this defense because their style is conducive to it. But you just have it's like you have a mishmash of players. You have a handful of players who fit this style. Most of the players don't. So, in my opinion, good coaching says, okay, here's what I have. Here's the type of players I have. Let me try to implement or modify my system so that it emphasizes the strengths of the players I have. Not, I'm going to call my plays and my game the exact way I want it to go. It's my system. This is just the way it is. And these players have to get with it or fall by the wayside. Well, Steve Wilkes, you were the one who fell by the wayside because you were relieved of your duties this week. Former defensive back Chris Harris, NFL player, and Chris Harris will be the interim defensive coordinator for the rest of the season. For all those people out there saying, oh, we expect big changes, you're morons. What's going to happen in 3 weeks? What big changes? Maybe little tweaks here and there, but you're talking about an install in a defense that was put in from the spring. They've been doing this for months. You think, all of a sudden in 3 weeks you're going to flip everything that you've been doing? I hope they play better, but to expect there to be some 180 in the way this defense is playing this week, notwithstanding, with the Saints, who are also one of the worst teams record-wise in the NFL. Yeah, this is the perfect time to do it with them playing this team. But there's nothing Wilkes did that could make you say, it was one of the things that I was hoping Glenn would do. And I'm not saying I don't care he did it in season, but I was hoping it wasn't going to be the season ended, and now we started to hear that usual BS of, well, he didn't have his players. We have to see what it will look like if we start bringing in players that fit into his style of defense. He's got an old style of defense. There's nothing that they tackle poorly. They take poor angles. They don't do anything. They put no pressure on the quarterback. They don't come anything close to forcing turnovers. And don't give me the BS fumble when all the scrubs ran at the end of the game against Jacksonville. Whatever, to that one. But interceptions, I believe they already set or tied the record for futility. And it's embarrassing. That's the thing. It got to the point where it was bad, struggling, a little bit better, and it was only a little bit better because your competition was a whole lot worse. And then once you started playing the better teams again, it looked like shit again. So I think Glenn made the right move. I know there were a lot of people out there saying, well, how big of a move was this for Glenn? Because he's the one who hired the guy. And there were people saying, well, he benched Fields, but he's the one who signed Fields. He fired this guy, but he's the one who hired this guy. There's just some people, it's something I learned. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Can't please everybody. It's just the way it goes. Everybody, if they don't like you, if they want a bone to pick with you, to find anything to bitch about, and this is another one. You can't win with everyone. If you would have waited until after the season, what the hell did you wait for? This team was so bad. Why did you fire him? I mean, what more? What more do you want? One thing I do like about what he shows there, and Muji as well, if they make a mistake, they're not afraid to admit they made the mistake. And that's the first step to fixing a mistake, admitting you have it and fix it. Don't just double down. When you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. He recognized it. It's just trending so far in the wrong direction. Not even struggling. It's incompetent. They look incompetent. They look like they do not belong on the field defensively. They do not know what they're doing. In the back end of that defense, I know they're depleted. I know they made a lot of trades, but at least look like you know what you're doing. They don't look like they know what they're doing at all. They do nothing to apply pressure. Is Will McDonald this bad? Is Jermaine Johnson this bad? Are they that bad that the Jets should have traded them? Or is this defense just that bad? Or was the defensive coordinator just that bad that he was not putting them in and he was doing nothing to put them in a position to succeed and be successful and maximize their strengths? I'm leaning more towards the latter. And that's part of I'm also hoping that as well, because if those two are as bad as they've looked over the last few weeks, we got a whole lot more to do in the offseason than the whole lot we have to do already. So that's something I'm hoping is not an issue. That it's an issue. It's something that's cleared up now with removing Steve Wilks as a defensive coordinator. Now it's get a jump on who is going to be your defensive coordinator in 2026. Is that someone who's already on the staff, or do you already have your eye on someone to hire once the season's over? Maybe it's someone on one of the teams right now, and you have to wait till the season's over to get permission. We'll see. But that absolutely was a horrendous defense that we were subject to watch week after week after week. And I thought it was something he'd do after the season. I also mentioned I hope it wasn't let's give him a chance, get his players. Nope. Glenn recognized the issue, recognized the problem, said no reason to wait. Your services are no longer required. Thank you for your time. We're moving on without you. Why wait? Rip off the Band-Aid as soon as you know that it's not working. And that's one thing I do applaud Glenn on, and anybody who's taking him to task over that. You can't take a look in the mirror and really tell me what you think he should have done. If he would have just not done anything, you probably would have bitched at that. So to those people out there, maybe you just weren't Glenn backers to begin with, and no matter what he does, unless he just is flat out successful to the point where you can't complain, and you'll probably still do at that point anyway, they're just going to find anything to bitch about with this guy until he shows, until and unless he shows that he can actually make this franchise successful again. So Wilkes is gone. Garrett Wilson out for the rest of the year. I thought it makes total sense. The fan in me was hoping you could see what it looked like with him and Mechie and Adonai Mitchell on the field at the same time. But that's not going to happen till next season. This is the right move when you just think about it from a team standpoint and a long-term standpoint. You're playing for nothing. If he's not going, even if he was 100%, it sounds like he's not. Even if he's close, sit him. There's nothing to play for. If you were going to play for something, if they were playing for something, I'm sure he would have played. He was on board. The team was on board. The medical staff was on board. Sit him down. No reason to play this guy at all. Have him 100% ready for the offseason program and come out firing in 2026 when the Jets will hopefully have a second wide receiver or maybe a 1A, 1B to him going into by the time next year's draft, free agency and next year's draft is over. I think Adonai Mitchell has shown himself to be a potential number 3 or 4. Mechie the same. Arian Smith, I know he was mentioned as a possible 5. Not really feeling what we're seeing from him. The third interception that Cook threw in the game against the Jaguars, that to me was on Smith. He did nothing to fight for the ball or go get the ball. The defender just came in and essentially took it from him. So at least help your quarterback out a little bit. Either make a play for the ball or make sure the other guy doesn't intercept it. He's not showing me a lot right now other than, line up and run. And they're not taking enough deep shots to even utilize him in that way. So I don't know what he's going to be, but the hope is that we found the third and fourth receivers. You got Garrett Wilson. So that means there's a lot less work to do. And that why hopefully it keeps bearing out for the last 3 games of the season that there's a lot less work to do in that room in the offseason than we thought before the trades of Adonai Mitchell and John Mechie. So that's where we go. The Jets extended Jeremy Ruckert. So the Long Island kid, the lifelong Jets fan, will be a Jet now. And he's shown some improvement. He's shown improvement in blocking, in his pass catching. Nobody looks fantastic. So nobody's stats look gaudy. They look god-awful, not gaudy. But when you watch him, he looks like you can see there's improvement. His blocking has improved. A lot of times when you see these runs, like the Isaiah Davis run, it's Membu and Ruckert blocking. It's if the other side is Fashanu and Ruckert. So you see Ruckert is and go back to the run. I believe the run against Cincinnati was the touchdown run, one of the touchdown runs by Breece Hall, where it's I believe it's Ruckert blocking all the way downfield that allows him to score the touchdown on that play. So I think he's shown enough, and I'm glad that the Jets are starting to they're proactive. The extension of Myers, the extension of Ruckert, not big money. They didn't give these guys big money. They locked them up for a couple of years. Myers will be more depth, as I mentioned last week. Ruckert, same thing. You already have Mason Taylor. You have Ruckert. What you're trying to do is, for as many pieces as you think you already have on this team, I'm not saying these are going to be the A team, but if they're depth, if you could say this is definitely good enough depth that we want to lock up and not have to try to find this depth in the offseason, whether in the draft or in free agency, that's less you have to do then and more that you can simply focus on now, increasing the top of that depth chart, increasing whether it be, obviously we know they need help at the top of the wide receiver room. What are you going to do with the running back? It's the defense that needs. I've done a bunch of mock drafts, and I know we'll talk about that once the season moves in. Once we start moving into the off season, where it's the draft position. Once the playoffs are complete, it'll be solidified. not only their pick, but the pick they got from the Colts, which is looking better and better as each week goes along, and they keep piling up the losses. If they lose out, that pick can go from what was projected to be potentially, the 32nd pick in the draft or at the bottom of the first round in the draft to maybe a mid-round pick, mid-first round pick in this upcoming draft. That's huge. That's a huge difference. And I'm sure if the Colts thought that that's what it was going to be, they probably don't include all that in the Sauce Gardner deal, who he's also hurt, and Daniel Jones is hurt and tough. I don't really care. Keep losing, lose all the way out. Let us get as high a pick as possible for that pick. We got our own pick, the first round pick that will be hoping as finishes as high as it can. So that positions us either to make a move if we think any of the quarterbacks coming out are worth it, or if we get to a certain point where that quarterback is just there for us to take. So these are things that we'll hope will happen as the season goes, comes to an end. And if everything keeps playing out the way it is, they're likely to have a top 5 pick in next year's draft. Quincy Williams playing hurt. Yeah, you guys saw him on Sunday with the claw on his hand. Didn't play well. I'm sure that claw didn't help. I'm sure Wilkes' defensive play calling didn't help. I give Quincy a lot of credit because he hasn't, his contract expires at the end of the year. Is with his status uncertain, he easily could just mail it in and say, sit me down, I'm not playing. But he was out there playing and competing. Again, I love the guy. I love the way he plays, but I'm not going to sit here and say who should be back, if he should be back, or any of these defensive players who are on the bubble, whether they're going to be back or not, because it obviously depends on who they bring in to be defensive coordinator. If these guys don't fit that style, if Sherwood, who I know they just gave the contract to, and Quincy are just too small, like kind of these hybrid linebackers, and they're more conducive to the playing for a defensive coordinator like Saleh, and not for whoever the Jets bring in, the Jets they're going to have to move on from these guys. So I think there's going to be a lot more work to be done on the defensive side of the ball than the offensive side. And that's funny because their defense has always been something that's been pretty solid, and their offense looks horrendous. But with the strength of their offensive line, if they re-sign Hall, they have Isaiah Davis, they'd be getting Braylon Allen back. You have Garrett Wilson, Mechie, Adonai Mitchell. You either sign a 1A, 1B wide receiver, or you get that guy high up in the draft. Now you're starting to that obviously, and then whoever you pick at quarterback, whoever they pick, I don't think is going to be starting the season as a starting quarterback. So obviously, who will the Jets get to be that bridge quarterback? I don't think it's going to be Brady Cook. Maybe it's Marcus Mariota. Who knows? I believe the Jets also brought in Hendon Hooker, who was on the Lions last year, just in case Fields or Taylor is not clear to be the backup this week to Cook. They do have another quarterback. They brought him in this week. He's got a lot of physical talent, but who knows what he can be. They obviously brought him in to be a body just in case the other two guys can't back up Cook this week. So those are the things that happened this week. So a lot of big change, obviously, with firing Wilkes. Good moves with the resigning, sitting of Wilson. Good move with the extension of Ruckert. They got the Saints playing the Saints this week. It's a huge game in terms of draft position. Obviously, as a Jet fan, I want them to win the game. I'm going to be rooting for them to win a game. I root for them to win every game. If you're a Jets fan and you don't do that, you're not a Jets fan. Don't give me the shit about, it doesn't matter if they win. It matters what the draft pick is. It's not how it works. That's not how it works. You cannot. Everybody who ever tries to manipulate these things, it doesn't usually work out for you. And it doesn't work out for those teams. The Jets have tried a myriad of ways to do this. They had Darnold as a third pick, Wilson as a second pick. Failed both miserably with the Jets anyway. So just play out. get your team used to winning, get the culture used to winning. Whatever happens, happens, and let the chips fall where they may. Because these first round picks, all of these picks, they're 50-50 at best. So who cares? Who cares? You don't know who's going to be there at this point. There's no draft board that's sitting there saying, well, if you pick here, here's everybody who's coming out. Here's who you can get. That doesn't exist yet. All the big boards you see, they're projected. If these guys come out, this is where I have them. This is the order I have them going. That's going to change. The underclassmen haven't even declared yet. So who the heck knows is going to be there? So you got the Saints this week. They got Tyler Shuck. You look for draft position. You want the Saints to win this game. Let's not get that twisted. That's a fact. If you want the better draft position, you want the Saints to win this game. The Saints don't have Kamara. Neal is also hurt at running back and out. They're going with their third and fourth string guys. They still have Chris Olave. They have some weapons on offense. They've been playing tough the last few weeks, just coming off the upset this past week. So they're playing. It's in New Orleans, which is always a tough place to play. Look, the Jets are in no position to say, oh, how do we lose to this team? You're that team. You're the team that people would say that about. Not anybody else at this. Maybe the Raiders would be the team. Is like, ooh, even if the Jets played the Raiders and they lost to the Raiders, you'd be like, yeah, now you're the worst. Because the Raiders just look dreadful. And I think that my guess is they're going to lose out and get that number one pick. The Jets will have a chance to get into that, maybe the 2 spot or the 3 spot. The 2 spot, fine. If they get the 2 spot and 2 quarterbacks come out, guess what? You got it. You'll scout them. They'll scout them both. And if they think both of them are worth picking, they'll pick the one that falls to them. Fantastic. Everybody wins. Because this is the one game that can screw up the Jets draft position, because I think they're just going to get blasted the next 2 weeks against New England and Buffalo. Those teams got everything to play for. They're far superior to the Jets right now, and I don't think the Jets will have a chance in either of those games. My hope is that, again, they just make it keep it respectable. Don't look like a JV team playing the varsity. At least look like you belong on the field, but I don't think they'll win either of those games. I don't think they're going to win this game against the Saints. I just think it's not that the Saints are that much better. I just think that, they're playing better at this time. The Jets, you're on your undrafted free agent as a quarterback. You might have a guy that you just took off the scrap heap as the backup this week. Hall is playing with a dinged up knee. Wilson, is not coming back. So you're playing guys who might project to be your third, fourth, fifth guys in your wide receiver room in 2026. They're now your 1, 2, 3 guys in the games for the rest of the season. Taylor's still banged up. So you got Ruckert. The teams like Jacksonville, obviously the strength of this Jet team is still special teams. They had a punt return called back last week against Jacksonville. Williams did, which was a bullshit call by the official, calling a play of blocking out of bounds. It had nothing to do with the play. And I think it happened for all of a second or two. And it was just ridiculous. It could have been a momentum changer at the time because it would have made the game 21-14. But if you watch that game, almost every kickoff from Jacksonville was booted out of. I don't even know if there was a kick that was returned. Maybe one kickoff was returned in that game. They were booting it out of bounds. They did not want anybody. They didn't want the Jets returning any kicks because that's the one thing right now that they're doing exceptionally well. It's their special teams. So I expect more of that for the rest of the season. Not doing whatever you can to not kick to these guys, even on punts. I think you're going to start seeing that as well. Just angling them to the corner, kicking it as far as you can up and out of bounds. It's the one thing the Jets do well. So if I'm another team, it's like, why give them any opportunity to get any type of momentum in the game, this is the unit that they use to give them momentum. Just don't take them out of the game as much as you can and let the offensive defense try to keep them in the game and potentially win the game. And we've seen when the special teams is not a factor in these games. Miami, Jacksonville, the last 2 weeks, just dreadful games, both of them. So, and if the special teams doesn't do anything the rest of the way, I expect the Jets to finish this season 3-14 and wind up either with the second or third pick in a draft. If that's the case, we'll find out together, and I'll be here along the way with you guys, hoping and suffering at the same time, just being exhausted doing so, but having a lot of fun talking about it with everyone. I love the comments. I like everybody to continue liking and subscribing so others could find the show. And I will be here with my reaction and news and notes and preview after the game this week against the Saints. As always, I'll do a reaction, news and notes, preview of the upcoming game. Until then, everyone, take care.